Hey, everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back with another fantastic episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And this week, I've got a really, really fascinating guy and really inspirational. His name is Leon Logothetis. Leon, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And listen, a lot of these episodes, I start by saying I've got another fantastic guest, and it seems like I'm repetitive, but in fact, I do have these amazing people doing incredible things. And I want to set this up, and then I want to dive back into your story. So I want you to picture me about 2 weeks ago, and I don't watch hardly any TV, and there's all these games of Game of Thrones and all these other series on Netflix and HBO and all these other ones that people are always saying to me, hey, Mark, have you seen this show or that show? And since I don't watch any TV, my answer is always no. So now I'm in Sun Valley, Idaho, and it's a little blustery outside. And so it's a Friday night. And so I turn and I say to myself, I'm going to turn on Netflix. I'm going to search and find for something that would seem interesting to me. Okay. And I typically don't watch just dramas. I like to have some kind of factual basis behind what I watch. So I turn on Netflix, I'm flipping through, and all of a sudden I come across this kind of yellow cover, and it says the Happiness Diaries. Or I'm sorry, the Kindness Diaries. And so I look at it and I go, that's really interesting. Well, what is that about? Because I've been through ups and I've been through downs, and certainly I'm always looking towards the light. I'm looking for positivity. And so I like, this is really interesting. So I turn this thing on, not knowing one thing about you, what your name is, what you do, what the show is about. And all of a sudden I see you in this little convertible VW in the throes and the deep parts of Alaska, which I climbed a mountain called Denali up there, which is pretty intense. And you're in these snowstorms and you set off, and this whole thing is captured by you saying something like, my name is Leon. I used to be a broker in London. I burned out, and now I'm trying to travel from Alaska all the way down to Argentina, and I've got no money, and I am looking for people with random acts of kindness. So I've spoken way too long for a normal intro, but I just wanted to tee that up so you could understand where I was coming from absolutely no background. And I want to get into this. So I know before this you did a motorcycle diary with the sidecar, and so correct me wherever I'm going wrong and going off the deep end here. But like, how did this whole thing get going?
Yeah, sure. So I did actually the first season of the show, which was also on Netflix. I took a vintage yellow motorbike from Los Angeles, and I went all the way around the world back to Los Angeles, relying on the kindness of strangers. And people can actually now watch it on Amazon Prime. But the way that it started, you have to go back to 2004 when I was working as a broker in London. And on the outside, I pretty much had everything you would want. But on the inside, I was pretty much broken. And no one really knew except me. But, I had to live with myself. And one day
So stop for a second. Tell me how you were broken.
I was depressed. I was isolated. I was not sharing my pain. I was lost. I was just every type of broken that you could imagine, I was. Yet, because I had the external success, you wouldn't look at me and think, oh, he needs help. But he did need help, a lot of help, which I received. And I ended up stumbling across the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which is a romanticized version of Che Guevara traveling around South America relying on kindness. And there was something about that movie, and I've shared this story so many times, but every time I share it, it still has an emotional impact on me. When I watched it, I realized there was another way to live. It was about a guy, traveling around from his heart and not living from his mind. And it just showed me there was another way to live. It showed me that I didn't have to sit behind that desk. I didn't have to follow someone else's dream. I didn't have to live another person's life. And that's how it all began. Now, we could go even further back and say that as a kid I felt alone. As a kid I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel like I mattered. I didn't feel like I was, I had everything again on the outside, but not the emotional nourishment that children need. And I took that pain and kind of did things that I'm not proud of until I got healthier by sharing my pain, by speaking to people, by going to therapy, by changing the direction of my life.
When I'm watching the show, there's definitely a correlation that there's been a major shift, it sounds like, because I know a lot of brokers, very successful ones. And when you kind of go to from me to you in that mental shift, because when you're engaging with these different people, and I want to get into some of these different stories, but when you're engaging with these different people, it's really all about you showing up as your true, authentic self. And then what I saw was that the people that you happen to show or feature, or that invited you into their house, any guard that was up, they ultimately dropped, as you really had this compassionate connection with the way that you communicated with them. And it was really special to me to see, especially a male figure, and you're a strong dude, traveling all over, and there's some risk, I'm sure, when you walk up to a stranger and say, hey, listen, here's the deal. I've got no money, and I just pulled into this town and kind of sleep at your house. And I can only imagine the many no's as well as the few yeses you got. But again, it's I think what you're trying to do is seeing who could open their heart and have this random act of kindness back towards you, not knowing really anything about your background.
Absolutely. And the trick, I don't really want to call it a trick, but let's call it a trick. The trick is that you come from your heart. And once you come from your heart, they also, more often than not, come from their heart too. Yes, there are people that don't, and that's fine, whatever. But the people that you see on the screen, it's like you're bypassing the mind and you're going directly to the heart. And you're connecting with them on a level that can't be seen. It can only be felt. And if you mirror it to them, they will feel it.
Yeah, interesting. And there's a number of interactions that you have where you're like walking across the street and you approach, XYZ person, and you're saying, I could just feel this connection. I could feel this aura. I could feel this energy that was coming across the street that like pulled me in. And now here we are. And then like all of us, and this is the interesting thing about what you said about your broker life back in London, is that we all have these shells. And by the way, too, when I'm about to say this, I'm now 57 years old, right? And it took me all of like 50 years to figure all this out. But, the more open and honest and vulnerable I was and have become, the greater gifts have come my way. They've actually come pouring in. They've showered over me. But it's really almost that me too, where, hey, listen, before you tell me anything about your bad stuff, let me just share with you like all the pain and suffering and all the other stuff that's going on with me. And it's amazing how people just like kind of drop their shield and want to engage with you.
Absolutely, because we're emotional creatures. Yet we live in a society that tells us that you have to live from your mind, you have to live from your brain, you have to be clever, you have to be cunning, you have to be all these things. But they forget that the real superpower is to be in touch with your feelings. And if you're in touch with your feelings, you're living in a totally different world. Doesn't mean that you let people walk all over you, no, by no stretch of the imagination. But you feel through everything. And when you do that, you're living in a totally different zone.
Yeah, I like what you said about the superpower. I mean, that really is the fuel on your back. And when people go out of their way and do something amazing for other people, and it can just be a smile. I mean, a smile is worth 1,000 words. That lifts people up. It can be the absolute gift that people have been looking for. I was going to ask you this question because in my dynamic, my dad, he grew up through the 50s, and whenever my dad was a great guy. He was awesome, incredible. I'm so thankful that I had my dad. He's passed away now, but we never did the hug, right? It was always the shake. Great job, son. Shake, shake, shake. And I just picture that the kind of the same, like the British way of being very formal about everything. And I don't know if that's just a generality or if that's true, or that was just happened to be your case in terms of you not having that connection that you were talking about as you were growing up?
Look, I think it's a generalization, but it's also true in the English society, stiff upper lip and all that. So yes, growing up, I did feel isolated. Doesn't mean that I wasn't surrounded by people. I was, but I did certainly feel isolated. And maybe that's why you've seen the show. So you see, I always hug people. I always tell people, "Do you want a hug?" And they're like, and so far, do you know what's funny? Only one person in my entire journey has ever said, "No, I don't want a hug."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, no worries. I won't give you a hug then."
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you about that, because that is kind of a kind of a signature piece of yours at the end of these episodes. And I want to get into a little bit more depth, so that the listener understands truly about what this show can go. One of the things I always say is like, okay, so first of all, you're a broker. Let's go back to your life as a broker in Britain, and everything on the outside is going great, and you're making money. You got the things that you need to have, to stay alive and lead a fun life, exciting life. But so many times when I've talked to my friends about opportunities, and then the fear factor creeps in because you've got these golden handcuffs. And so I want to ask you about the golden handcuffs, about where at some point in time in your journey, where you're kind of looking afar at this Motorcycle Diaries that you had seen, of maybe a little bit of an inspiration of an idea, and kind of where you were in your life. At some point in time, you have to jump off the cliff, right? And so how hard was that for you, that on one hand you've got the golden handcuffs, and then the other hand you've got this idea, and you had no idea where this was going to go? I'm sure there wasn't a Netflix series. There wasn't all these books, YouTube, ABC, Good Morning America. There wasn't all this stuff, right? Which has become, because it just pulls at everybody's heart when you're on there and you're traveling, you're interacting with these different people. But when you're in that moment of jumping, how great was that fear of the unknown that you were about to step into?
Look, it was not an easy thing to do. I was fortunate in many ways because I was a broker and I had some money. Had I not had any money, it would have been a lot harder to do. And I don't know if I would have done it. So everything aligned, the stars aligned to enable me to do it. I understand not just the golden handcuffs, but for the people that are just trying to get by and trying to pay their mortgage and trying to put food on the table of their kids, for their kids. It's not an easy thing to follow your heart. But I would say that if you can find the courage to do that, everything will change. And what I'm going to say now is what truly pushed me to do what I did, was pain. I was in so much pain emotionally that I couldn't sit behind that desk any longer. And the pain pushed me to do something different. So you know how many of us try and stay away from pain?
Yeah.
I get that. But the pain is actually a gift. If you face the pain and you walk through the pain, at the end is a pot of gold. And I don't necessarily mean gold as in gold.
Yeah.
I mean the metaphorical gold. So yeah, I don't wish pain on anyone. But if you're in pain, just keep walking through it.
Yeah, I've had, there's another lady that is down in Malibu, sort of close to where you are now, Kathy Eldon, and she was amazing. She's gone through amazing stuff. She was on an earlier podcast, and she was talking about you have to really just go through it. You can't leap over it. You can't go around the side like a detour once you go through it. And, I went through a lot of tough stuff 7-8 years ago, but as we started talking about this at the beginning of the podcast, I wouldn't have found the podcast. I wouldn't be doing things and having these interactions with people like you and Laird Hamilton and Mariel Hemingway and all these other amazing people. I wouldn't have started climbing all over the world. I wouldn't have been invited to be on the Waterboys philanthropic project to go build water wells in Tanzania for the people in the Maasai tribe. I mean, it's been incredible stepping into it. It was awful. But the gifts have come back around, which has been amazing. So I want to go to the other end of how this show plays out. So you're driving from city to city, and You are in search of trying to find somebody who will invite you into their home just to spend one night. And in some cases, pay your gas. In some cases, maybe even give you some food. And in many of these cases, the ones I saw, there's, as you get to know them and the barriers get broken down, you're finding out about their plight in many cases. And on the other thing, what they don't know is that you are about to give them the gift of a lifetime. You're about to give them the gift of building the second floor of a school down in someplace in South America or Mexico. I can't remember which one it was. The gift of giving somebody $1,000 so they can go and pass that on to their mother who was just wiped out by a hurricane or something. There's these gifts at the very end of the rope, which then create this emotional moment, which then create the hug, right? So for you, where is the funds coming? Is this something that you had made enough from a brokerage standpoint where you could just fund all these people at your discretion, or the sponsors, or I was trying to understand that piece.
Yeah. So the gifts I pay for myself.
Yeah.
The production is paid for by whoever funds the show.
Yeah.
Okay. And you would think that the gifts were so much money. They're not. Like in season 1, episode 7, I end up being in India, and I stay the night in the slums of India with a rickshaw driver who rents his rickshaw. So 50, 60, 70% of his money goes to the rental of the rickshaw. And I end up buying him a rickshaw. Okay. And me and the crew, and it changes everything for him. But it only costs $3,500 to buy a rickshaw. So yes, $3,500 is a lot for some people, but in the grand scheme of things, to change someone's life, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So the amounts of money are not as big as one would believe.
Yeah. Well, again, it's relative to everybody's own world, yes, as you're just saying, right? And yeah. So $1,000 to somebody who doesn't make very much money or any money at all, it's relevant to what they can do to actually pass it and pay it forward to somebody else and do something amazing. I remember there was another episode, you were somewhere, and this is with the first season, you're in this really cool vintage motorcycle with a sidecar, right? And by the way, I've not seen those episodes. Do people actually ride in your sidecar with you?
Sometimes, yes.
Awesome. And then season 2, you are in this really cool yellow, both these vehicles are yellow VW convertible bug. And it's awesome. And the first one's called Kindness 1, and the second one is called Kindness 2, I believe.
Yes. So
where did was this originally, was the inspiration from the Motorcycle Diaries about a guy traveling around on a motorcycle that inspired you on the motorcycle? And then what was the transition? Why trade in the motorcycle for the VW bug?
Well, when you watch season 1, you will notice that the bike always breaks down.
Oh.
So to the point of just being impossible to function. The car breaks down too, but not to the same degree. Have you ever seen the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so I was inspired by the Motorcycle Diaries to do it on a motorbike, and then I was inspired by Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to give the motorcycle like a life, to make it a character.
Yeah.
And that's really where it all came from.
Yeah, that's like Herbie the Love Bug, right?
Exactly.
The old Disney series.
Exactly.
Back in the day. That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so right now, so you go through and you do season 1, and then are you picked up? Is this the way television works? Then you're picked up for season 2 on Netflix?
Well, basically what happened with season 1 was I just took a risk and did it myself.
Yep.
And then I got fortunate that Netflix came on board. And then season 2, they helped produce it.
Yeah.
So season 1 I just did. Season 2 they helped produce it.
And is there a season 3?
Well, we're working on season 3, which is Scotland to Singapore.
Okay.
Which is insane, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And I assume you're going to float that car across, right?
No, it's going to be a yellow submarine.
Are you kidding?
Yes.
You're kidding.
Yes, I am kidding.
Yeah, good. That's what I thought.
I wouldn't get past the English Channel, let's be clear.
Yeah. You're blown out of the water. So tell me what I mean, every episode, and this is the reason why I was addicted. First of all, they're like 24 minutes. So I could quickly go through, and I was doing 2 or 3 episodes a night. And so I went through a whole season like in a week. And for me, that's like a record for my television habit. But between being on a motorcycle and traveling around and being in your VW Bug convertible and traveling all the way down to Argentina, which is, by the way, is a great country. Are there a couple stories, 1 or 2 stories that stand out more than others in terms of the people that have, I know you've affected them in amazing ways, but how have they affected you?
Wow, that's a very, very good question. From season 1, I want to go back to season 1 because there was a story that's just incredible. I was in Pittsburgh, and I would go up to people and ask if I could stay the night in their houses. And most people would say no, which is, of course, understandable. And I started chatting to this guy, and I said, "Can I stay in your house tonight?" And he goes, "Look, I'm really sorry, I'm homeless." So I'm like, "Okay, I just asked a homeless guy to stay in his house, feel a lot of shame, but I had to walk off." And he turns around and he says, "Well, you know what? If you want, you can stay with me tonight. I will feed you, I'll protect you, and I'll give you some clothes." And that is exactly what happened. I ended up sleeping on the streets of Pittsburgh with a homeless man for one night. And the next morning, I was able to put him up in an apartment and send him back to school. And he always says, "Oh, you changed my life, you changed my life." And I say to him, "My friend, it is you who changed my life." Because what he taught me was that kindness is free. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much money you don't have. What matters is that it flows through all of us. We get to choose. Another thing that he taught me was that true wealth is not in our wallets, but it's in our hearts.
Yeah.
And these were fabulous moments. And then there was another moment from season 2 when I ended up in Ecuador, and I met this lady who looks after dogs. She had like 30, 40 dogs in her house. And she was a woman of pure love. And she was a woman of pure kindness. And she was a woman that truly opened up my heart. And I had a dog called Winston Churchill, who was a Boston Terrier.
Yeah.
And he was very, very naughty. And he really taught me how to love. And I got very emotional with her because it was clear we didn't know each other, but we knew each other. And it was so beautiful. And it kind of, all the barriers fell away.
So as you go forward, and you said you're going to go from Scotland, another awesome country.
Yeah.
I've golfed all over there, and down to Singapore. Is there any different angle or vibe or mission? Maybe that's a better way. Your mission is to go down and continue the same, interacting with all these people, because it seems to me, I mean, like, this is literally endless, going across the globe, meeting different people, trying to get them engaged, asking them if you can stay at their house, and then kind of like, we'll see what happens. I mean, it seems, I don't know if there's a different angle that I'm looking at, but it just seems like this is such just a slam dunk, easy, fantastic, phenomenal, inspiring story, which never end.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are really only 2 things left to do. And that is to go, we were going to do Finland to South Africa. And then you can do, because that's down, and then you can do Scotland to Singapore. So you've really only got 2 things left. So there'll become a time when I can't do it anymore, but the heart is eternal and universal. So I'm sure I'll come up with some other shows where there's adventure and also connection, because that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you could just start at the tip of the northernmost part of California and go to San Diego, and like every 20 minutes you're stopping in some new town, and you've got a story. I mean, I don't think you need to go to other countries.
You ultimately don't need to go anywhere. You can walk outside your door and start connecting with people. Everyone has a story.
Everybody does have a story, and that's what I've come to know. And that's one of the things you're talking about your burnout, and you kind of got to a place where you're this broker. I was getting there in a different way, which is every day, everybody going outside of my neighborhood that I was in. It was a flat street, and there were no fences in between the houses, and so it was a bunch of lawns just all tied together that ran over lawn after lawn and lawn. And I could just imagine, because I was seeing this from people who had been there 30 years before myself, that would walk out of the door, go 30 feet to go pick up the newspaper, turn around and go walk back in. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that's going out to get my newspaper and turn around after 30 years and doing the same routine over and over and over and over again, because there's so much life to be lived. It's interesting that from time to time, I will get people say, Mark, boy, you've lived such an incredible life. And I turn it around really to say, I've been able to experience some cool things, yes, but look at all the things I haven't done. And just like all these countries that you're going to, all the lives that you're affecting, and I'm sure you have all kinds of outside interests as well, but every single one of these countries, the language, the people, and all the experiences that you're gathering, it's just ever changing, and there's nothing that's ever the same, from the topography of Alaska to the mountains or the beaches of Argentina. So it's all different.
It is, and one thing I've learned is that travel is the school of life. When you go out into the world, you become better, you become wiser, you become kinder, you turn off the blinkers. If you just grow up in one little small place and that's all you see, and you turn on the channel and that's all you watch is one TV station, whether it's left leaning or right leaning, you're living like in a little bubble. Go out into the world. There's a very famous quote, which I can't remember, but I'm going to butcher it. But basically, let's say you're having an issue with immigration. Okay, I get it. You have an issue with immigration. Go to the border and start meeting some of these people. Like you saw we did in episode 4 of season 2. I did that on purpose because I wanted people to see the human side of people suffering. I'm not going to get involved in whether crossing the border is right or wrong. I'm not. That's for other people. But go and listen and feel and see their humanity.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll have a different opinion.
Yeah, perspective, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, so you go down, you're on this road trip, and you're meeting different people, and obviously you're having all this filmed. Where does the camera guy stay?
In hotels.
Yeah, good.
There are some times when I don't feel 100% safe that he will stay with me, but it's very rare.
Yeah. Yeah, and is it just one guy, or is there a whole production team now?
So season 2 was between 5 and 7.
Yep.
Season 3 was between 4 and 6. And that includes the drivers and stuff like that. Like the crews, they have a car that follows me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, you're getting all the different angles. And again, I haven't seen season 1, so I'm not comparing anything. One of the things that you've been able to do, which is really cool, is you've got a boatload of books that are out there. And the thing that I love about this is they all have these really unique titles. It's all wrapped around kindness, happiness, all this stuff. One of the ones that I'm going to name a bunch of them, but Go Be Kind, 28 and a half adventures guaranteed to make you happier. So on that book, when you're talking about 28 and a half adventures, what is the half? I can imagine.
So people would always say to me, I can't leave my job. I can't buy a yellow motorcycle. I can't buy a yellow VW Beetle. I can't be kind. And I would say to them, gently and kindly, you're missing the point. This isn't about quitting your job. It's about moment to moment kindness. Go out into the world and just be kind moment to moment. It's how you show up in the world every day. So I created the book. It's really a journal for kids and adults to go and have a Kindness Diaries adventure themselves. So they would go out and do these adventures in kindness to kind of just feel what it's like to live from the heart. And the half, I mean, to be honest with you, it just sounds better.
Well, you've got this hashtag, which is Go Be Kind. And at the end of the day, you're looking for this contagious chain reaction. And you're right. I mean, if again, it's like you giving the $1,000 to various people. And this one gal, and I'm losing a little bit of the detail here, but there's something that happened to her mother. She was either homeless or her house had been blown away by a hurricane or a tornado or something. And so she was going to go and give this $1,000. So it was you had a random act of kindness, hashtag go be kind. And then her intent was not to spend a penny on herself, but rather on her mother, which was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they say that kindness is contagious, and they say that kindness is a win-win. And I truly believe that. If you're kind to me, I'm going to win, and so are you. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There was another guy too that you met in Venice, and he was this older guy. And I'm trying to remember the story, but with this long white beard. And you came up upon him, probably the most random person. Looked like, a throwback from the 60s, a hippie or something, if I have to color this a little bit. But he turned out to be this warm, kind, sweet heart. And I think that he's another guy that you gave $1,000 to.
Yeah, that was a little webs thing that we did. And yes, I ended up giving him $1,000. And it really wasn't about the $1,000. I mean, it's not about the $1,000. $1,000 is not going to change his life. It's about the connection. It's about that feeling, having that feeling, that connection that me and him had, and then taking that feeling and spreading it as much as possible.
Yeah, he's really moved. I mean,
yeah,
seriously moved.
He was a good man, a really good man.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, he was Australian. Talk about the shell not matching what was going on inside there. I mean, I guess this goes for all of us. I don't know exactly what that means. Yeah. But, he from the outside, to me, he looked more like a rough, tough guy. And he was just this little teddy bear inside.
Absolutely.
Full of emotion. Okay. So you've got another book. And again, it's just like every one of these. By the way, so I'm headed to Everest in April of 2020, and I'll be up there for 2 months. Amazing. So, yeah. And part of that is just you have to acclimate at that, high altitude. So there's a lot of up and down and then resting in base camp. But at the end of the day, there's lots of opportunities to read books and journal write and do all other kinds of stuff like that. And so I'm going to bring one of these books along with me in the journey. Another one is called Live, Love, Explore. Is that it? I mean, you probably didn't even know. I was going to ask you, tell me about that book, but I think that's telling everything about what you're talking about.
Do you know what? That book is actually one of my favorite books because it's kind of like everything that I've learned from wise people. It's everything I've learned from other books, from documentaries, from films, from life, from travel. And that's where I got that travel is the school of life. And I always tell kids, teenagers or adults, that if they really want to go out and change the world and they want to change their lives, they need to take a risk and they need to truly find their passion. And that's what happened to me. And sometimes it's a challenge, and sometimes you want to give up. But I decided not to give up. And Live, Love, Explore is me not giving up and putting it out on paper.
Yeah, there's something that I was talking to a guy, Scott Svensson, who's the founder of Seattle Coffee Company that was bought out by Starbucks in England, and he's now started this new company called Mod Pizza, MOD Pizza, and he was talking about passion with a purpose, and his whole thing is truly about giving back, and I think that's what you're talking about. Live, love, explore. When you can do something, you have a passion behind it, you're going to be much more purposeful. And purpose always ties to why, and why usually means that you're have so much conviction about that you're not going to quit when things get tough.
Absolutely. As Winston Churchill once said, never, never, never give up. And if you have a reason, you won't. If you don't have a reason, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, Winston Churchill, that's your dog's name too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of connection there. The Mojo Diaries. Tell me about that.
So the Mojo Diaries actually is a book that I wrote after driving from London to Mongolia, and I'd lost my mojo, so I decided to drive to Mongolia, and it's kind of like all these little tips about how you can find your mojo by putting yourself in really idiotic situations.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a funny a funny book that, I don't know, I just started to write one day.
So how are you doing all these books? You've got, looks like to me 4 or 5 of these books that are out there in the marketplace. And, I think it's hard enough to write one book. I've been like hacking my way in that direction for quite some time. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, do you put aside X amount of time per day, or how has been your process to bring these little nuggets of life that you've learned into print?
Yeah, basically, when I start the process, I put 4 or 5 hours a day into it, and I write like just like, what's it called? It's called a puke draft. I think it's called a puke draft.
Yeah.
You just write everything. You don't even worry about what you're saying. You just write it all, and then you go back in and start the editing. So because I used to like write and I'd be like, oh my God, got to get this exactly right. I got to get the words right. I got to get the inflection right. And I could never write anything. So I just wrote it all out and then went back in and kind of edited it.
Yeah. I mean, incredible. I've got to try the puke theory.
Yeah. Just do it. Seriously. Don't think, just do.
Just do. So where does all this go? I know you've got another episode that's coming up, but are you thinking about anything more grand in the future about where this has gone? Because I have to imagine you've gone from, I'm saying this relatively speaking, nobody knows who you are, and now you've got some exposure. You've got this hashtag Go Be Kind. There's probably some foundational work in there. Is there some bigger picture that you're trying to get to with all this amazing work that you're doing about, at the end of the day, spreading happiness to more people, especially people who are down and out and trying to really figure the way?
I just ultimately want people to feel seen. I want people to feel like they matter. And I want people to feel their own magnificence. Things that I never felt. Yeah. That I do feel now because of other people inspiring me. And I do that with speeches, whether it be kids, whether it be companies. I do it with my books. I do it with shows. I do it with, content, whatever, just to kind of get them to like see beyond what the television shows them, like the dark side of television, and to bypass their head and go to their mind. So they're like, oh, there's another way to live. That's interesting. That's basically it. And just to keep on doing it.
Yeah, we all need inspiration. I certainly do. And it's, again, partially what got me to where I am. I've moved my whole life to Sun Valley, Idaho. I'm immersed in climbing and doing other things. And it just wasn't a blind move. It certainly came because I was inspired by some others who had come before me and some of the things that they had done. And so I think, we all, whether it's I'm inspiring somebody else or somebody like you is inspiring me, when I saw this show, and it's just like, it was a reminder of kind of that daily information I think that we all need about being kind, being humble, serving others, and showing up when you come into these different relationships. I mean, that's so important.
100%.
Yeah. So when you're in LA, which is where you are right now, do you get restless? Are you like itching to get back out on the road, or is just, you have enough going on where this is all like the planning stages of things that you're going to do and how you're going to go about it?
Well, look, I do enjoy sitting in LA and doing nothing, to be honest.
Yeah.
But there were, next week I'm going to be giving speeches, and for the rest of October, speeches, then some filming, then where I'm filming for 2 weeks, then I'm going to go away for a month. So it depends. I do a lot, and then I come back and I try and do nothing. Like today, I mean, I've worked, I've looked at a few emails, but I've basically done nothing.
Yeah.
which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, let's get, I want to sum all this up, and that is this. Again, I'll go back to where I started, which is at the end of the day, you stepped into your fear, and you've really created this amazing life for yourself, at least, from what I can see. And congratulations for doing that. And it takes a lot of balls to put your neck out there and make that all happen. And it takes a lot of effort. I have this corny little saying that I throw at my daughters every day. I've been saying this for 20 years, and they just roll their eyes, but it's really true, which is it takes a little more to make a champion. And you don't literally, I'm not talking about, getting the gold medal in the Olympics. I'm talking about it just takes effort if you want to do anything great, and takes consistency with daily discipline. And so I have this thing called FOF, which is feet on floor. And so every single morning, I'm very disciplined about getting out of bed, putting my feet on the floor, FOF. So I'm moving in the right direction. I brush my teeth. I take a breath there, make the bed, and then I'm off to the gym and working. But it's what I have to do to get my brain going. And everybody's different. Somebody might meditate, for example. Somebody might go stretch. Somebody might go have their morning coffee and read the paper. It doesn't really matter. But if you have a goal that's out there and you're trying to change your life, you have to step in and do things. And you mentioned this earlier, which are uncomfortable to you, so that you could break through, and then you feel empowered and you feel like you have a cape on your back. And you can really do anything, and anything is possible. And along the way, things happen and you got to adjust to them. But ultimately, you can get to where that end goal is where you're trying to achieve. But it takes the effort.
100%. I love it.
Yeah.
I do a little more to become a champ.
It takes a little more to make a champ.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can use that on one of your shows if you like.
All right, then I'll do that.
Yeah. All right. So, so again, I want to plug this, and I want to make sure I get this right. So I know for sure on Netflix, you can go on and you can find the Kindness Diaries, right? Where else can we find your shows? The Motorcycle.
So you can find the Kindness Diaries season 2 on Netflix, and
yes,
and the Kindness Diaries season 1 on Amazon Prime.
Yep. Good. I have both those things. So that's where I'm going to go next. Thank you for the hot tip. Okay. And then I know there's also, and we're going to put this in the show notes, but I got a lot of this content. And by the way, you've got a rockin' kick-ass website. I'm not talking about the way it's laid out or the colors or anything. I'm talking about just the cool content that's on there that's inspiring. And so I really recommend people to go and hit your website and reach out to you. And thank you. You're very kind to reach back to me to agree to be on this podcast. What is the your website? So everybody from, and also if you have Twitter or Facebook, where can they find
so my Instagram and Facebook is at the Kindness Guy. So that's pretty simple, at the Kindness Guy. And my website is my name, basically. So it's Leon Logothetis, which is a bit difficult to remember, but that's what it is.
Yep. And again, we're going to have that all spelled out in the right ways. So,
okay, cool.
Listen, I appreciate it sincerely. It's been an awesome pod for me to get caught up with you, to understand more about the shows that you're doing and how you're impacting the world. And it's incredible. And, my cue to you is keep going. And I'm hoping that we're going to do a wrap up on season 10.
God, season 10, please. I don't know if I'll be around for season 10.
That's a lot of homes, a lot of floors, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. Hey, and thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. Okay, if you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattissonnfl.com. That's Mark, M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.